Hello, girls. Welcome on in to Lost in Our 40s, a podcast by women for women where we talk about everyday life and how to make it better for ourselves. Welcome on. I'm Shiro, music by Temi Oyungu. Today we're talking about trauma and dating. So, the book is out. If you haven't heard it yet, the book is out. Date Like Cleopatra, The Good Girl Flips the Script by me, Shiro Ndune. It's there on Amazon. It will soon be available near you, physically in Nairobi. So watch out, watch this space. It's out there soon for you. So today we're talking about trauma and dating. Dating has so many things that affect it, and my view is that there is not enough conversation around this. We are not taught about how to date. We are not taught about how to get into relationships. Everyone is meant to figure it out on their own. And some of us might need a little more help than others. And we don't always know this, and we don't even know where to go for help if we do need it. So today we're looking at the effects of trauma. With trauma, the interesting thing about it is that a lot of people who've gone through trauma are not aware of it. I'll take the African example where we are taught that life is rough, tough. We need to have a thick skin. You need to, small things that happen shouldn't affect you. No, there are much more important things happening out there. That it would be soft belly. I don't know why that's what comes to mind, but it would be childish to want to have a soft life. No, no, no. I listened to this lady on YouTube, and she speaks in French. But she divides black people into two categories. So she's based out of Paris. So she talks about black people as either the ones who were raised in Africa or the ones who were raised, she calls it under a duvet. So they had the soft life. So she also gives dating advice. So she says she has a call-in show where people call in to listen to her, and then when she's listening to people and what issues it is they're bringing to her, and the person says that they're dating a black guy, that's the first thing she'll ask. If this person was born under lived the life under the duvet, so a soft life, everything pampered, everything was just cool, or was living out in Africa. And she's really silly because what she says, the example I remember her giving one day is, it was a conversation about a guy who does not show his emotional side. And the woman, and he was raised in the continent of Africa. And that's what she's saying is that this person was, example she gives is that he probably did not wear shoes until he was 10. The mosquitoes that bit him got tired because, his skin was so tough, they couldn't extract blood. So, of course, she's being very silly. She was raised in Africa herself. But then just trying to draw this divide that there can be different expectations. And that's actually what I'm talking about when it comes to trauma. Because a lot of us who are born in the continent, raised in the continent, you are not meant to think about certain things as having disturbed you. Of course not. You ate. You had the greatest life. You went to school. You ate. What more could you possibly want for? And I tie this in with the fact that our generation, so I'm 45, so our generation had parents and grandparents who were just so closely intertwined with the colonial era. So there is so much shift, there is so much loss of culture, which in and of itself is such a traumatizing event to the whole continent. So this continent of people who are super strong and super harsh has gone through such a devastation through the tearing away of culture that is really something that we should not be sweeping under the rug. It has had such a monumental impact on us, and unfortunately there was not much time to stop, and say, we are troubled, this has troubled us, we have gone through something so vastly unfair, it is incomprehensible. We need just the time to be told that we matter, we're important. We just hold on to ourselves and say, look, African babies, you're you've been through a rough time, and you are worthy. You are not little. From that came the slave trade, and came all this notion of black and the dark continent. So it's as though we had already been attacked, and then there's just more things being piled onto us. So without having the time to take out this breath and say, we have been through so much as a continent, so much as a country, so much as a people, so much as a nation, so much as individuals, we then just found ourselves drawn into capitalism and politics and all these other new systems which are all foreign to us. So we are really still scrambling and trying to abide by it. So my generation probably had a much easier go at it than my parents' generation. The generation after me undoubtedly also having a better time. So, but a better time doesn't take us away from the initial tragedy, because these things called generational curses, they're these things that just follow you. So even though you did not live through it yourself, there is this element that has passed through your family and been implanted in you. So just things to think about when we think about trauma. Though that is not the dimension I wanted to go into there, but I wanted to say that we don't have this very diminishing idea of trauma. That's things that happen to other people. It possibly has happened to you. It has happened to the whole continent. So there are impacts of that grand scale trauma on you probably. I'd say undoubtedly. I'm trying to be kind. I'm trying to couch it. I'm trying not to have you come here, you are happy with your day, just to be told that there's some impact of trauma in your life. But there is. And to say again that trauma is not the thing that happens, but the effect that it has. That's what Gabor Mate says. He's a trauma specialist. So the impact of that thing on your life, that is what trauma is. And now, after that big introduction, to bring it back to what we're talking about today. So, Gabor Mate, he's a good man. In his book, The Myth of Normal, I have it here as I'm looking down. In his book, The Myth of Normal, I bought it. My therapist at the time would have asked me, why did you buy it? Because it's this, why were you drawn into the topic of trauma? A question to you, are you drawn into the topic of trauma? And at the point I just thought, it's something interesting to read. So I was reading through the book. I didn't think much about it. This is an interesting thing. Such sad things that happened to other people, poor them. Then somewhere in the book, he says how he's having a conversation with a lady who says her childhood was idyllic, wonderful. Her childhood was amazing. And then he tells her one thing that shook me to the core. He tells her, did you have anyone to go to as a child when you were afraid? And I thought, man, that really, really made me think. That really, really made me think. Do you, like impulsively, if you were afraid of something, is there someone that you would go to? Because he says that if your situation was, if your answer to that is no, then maybe there are a few more things to uncover about your childhood. That your childhood, the sun-tinted, what are they called, rose-tinted glasses that you're looking at the past with, might need to be removed for you to uncover certain things that might have happened in your younger days. And always, these things can be very difficult to go through. Better to always have a counselor, a therapist, someone to help you through the process in case you do uncover things which are really difficult. Because trauma has this way of drawing you back. You might get drawn back into the event, and it can be really a feeling that is so horrendous, being drawn back into a traumatic event. And it can be something that really just kind of consumes you. So you need to have the right structure around you before you start delving into those topics. So the guidance there. But then again, now to our topic. So the things that could happen. The possibility, how I'm always just looking at my notes. So how trauma might impact your dating life, how it might show up. And that's my example. I was absolutely not aware that there was anything questionable about my childhood until I got that book from Gabor, until I read that piece. Then I started delving into it. That's when I got into therapy, then uncovered a number of things, and then came to realize that these things have impacted my dating life. And these are some of the things I want to discuss here with you. And in my case, one of them is being avoidant in relationships. So not, and this avoidance is not conscious. So in the book attached, they say that most people who are avoidant are not aware. You do not know that you're avoidant. You assume that you are the best that ever bestest est. You are a gem. You assume that you are secure. This is on attachment style. So there's secure, avoidant, and anxious, and anxious avoidant. Yes. So those are the attachment styles. So to be avoidant could be that you do not want to be in a relationship. You're not aware that you do not want to be in a relationship. And how would you be? Ever since you started hearing about relationships, it's something that all of society has pushed you towards. So it's again one of those things that you might never get the chance to ask yourself, is this something that I am personally interested in? No, you might not know. Why? Because you it's like a belief that has been implanted in you that I shall grow up, I shall go to school, I shall grow up, I'll get a job, I'll get married, I'll have children, I'll retire. It's just that path. Never a time to sit back and ask ourselves, but hold on, is there another route? Is there something else that I could be doing? Or do I even want to do these things that have been spelled out for me? Is this the path for me? So possibly, excuse me, something, my throat is drying out. So again, we say that lost in our 40s, we are here to look at things. This is the midlife crisis of sorts. And again, you don't have to be 40 to be listening to this. I was looking at my statistics incidentally, and on Spotify, I found that my listenership is. There was a big group, now I forget, but I think there was a big group between in their 20s, and I was quite impressed, and I thought, you guys have it, because I wish, one of the reasons I started this podcast is that I told myself that I wish there was someone who were telling me these things when I was younger, because then I wouldn't have felt so alone. I wouldn't have felt so different. I wouldn't have felt that everyone else has their shit together and I'm the one who's out here trying to figure things out. No, we are all somewhat flawed. And we all have different things that we find difficult. And I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're listening. And I truly hope that these conversations that we're having are helpful to you. And if you have any questions in particular, in things that you specifically would want us to address, please feel free to come out and get the book, Date Like Cleopatra, The Good Girl Flips the Script. But anyway, back to it. We're talking about being avoidant. So you're showing up as your everyday self. You're thinking that you're giving the relationships your best. But unless and until you can look back, because that's what happened with me. I had to look back and start seeing a pattern. And when the pattern emerges is when you realize that, aha, I have been doing things in a certain way that is keeping me away from relationships. And I saw it and I thought, for me, it was quite confusing. Because, again, as I said, I've always just thought that relationships is what my heart has always longed for. But when I look and realize, when I look and realize that I'm the one creating situations that ensure that the relationships will not materialize, and that's something to look at. So understanding your attachment style would be really, really useful in seeing how you're showing up in relationships, and if, especially on the trauma, on the avoidance side, because anxious, I think, is maybe much more straightforward to understand. Even in that book, they did say that the anxious people are aware that they're anxious, but if you're avoidant and you don't know, how do you get around it? And in my case, the avoidance tendencies, so anxious avoidance tendencies, can find their roots back in my childhood. So working again through therapy, working with a book, get yourself the book attached. And they had some very detailed exercises in the middle of the book. So do those ones. That's the one that really kicked it out for me. Because I've always done these ones. These you can find questionnaires on attachment style online. So I've always gone for those ones and always figured out I'm great. I'm just the best. So yeah, digging down a little bit more into that one. Then depending on the kind of situation that affected you, that led to whatever it is that happened in your past, it could have this drawing to the bad boy. So I wonder if I can explain this nicely. I remember hearing someone explaining it quite concisely, quite neatly, and it was something along the lines of how, because you were good, the good girl, because you've been this good girl, there are these elements of you that were not good. There's this part of you that wanted to lash out and do other things. But because you have contorted yourself to fit into that box of the good girl, then you pushed these parts of you down. You managed to almost suffocate them, to push them down and to repress them, such that they never got to see the light of day. And what is actually happening when you're being attracted to the bad boy is that these parts of you, these parts of you that were bad, and again, this good and bad, I put them in air quotes. So for me, they're just notional, because what is good and what is bad? The things that you have been taught are good or bad completely depend on your upbringing and who told you that they were good or bad. So the same thing could be good or bad depending on where, on the perspective of the person who has an agenda to teach. Conspiracy theory there. Well, look at it. Okay, not conspiracy theory, but I want to say flowers are good, but cutting flowers might affect bees. So, is it a good thing that you have flowers that are sitting on your table if then the bee population of the world is going to be affected? So, that's what I mean. So, not a conspiracy theory necessarily, but there are different perspectives and there are different ways of looking at different things. So, the attraction to someone who is free to do these things that you have never been allowed to do, it's so liberating. It's like a breath of fresh air. So that is this attachment, the attraction to this person who is everything that you have never been allowed to be. And that is why you might find yourself drawn to the bad boy. And the bad boy, even I remember when I was younger, Fonzarelli. What was that program? Telling you my age, but I always tell you my age. I'm 45. What was that? I forget what the name of that program was, but there was this like teen heartthrob. I guess I was young, so that was much older than me. But it's something that used to come on TV. He used to have this curly hair, like an Italian makeup, and the leather jacket, and he probably drove a bike, I guess. And Lorenzo Lamas, let's take that one instead. Do you guys remember when I was younger? There used to be this program called, oh, how can I forget the name? But the main character was called Lorenzo Lamas, and he was this built up guy with the hair. I don't know what he'd do with his hair, and he'd have the bike and the leather jacket with the things, and So all the girls were into him, crazy into him, but he would never settle down long enough for a relationship, and yet all the women that he met along his path would fall in love with him. You see these programs that we're taught. So then the programs that we see that then again just give us this image of the bad boy, this unattainable bad boy being what everybody wants, what every woman wants, and to be able to tame him. Oh, the joy. So all that to say that the media also doesn't help us on this quest. So internally, because of that repression, that's a part of us that you call the shadow. You might have heard me talk about it before. The part of you that you kept down, so attracted to itself elsewhere. So you are attracted to this bit, and then you get into this relationship with this bad boy. He treats you badly because that's all he knows. And often at times in such relationships, it's like you get into a relationship with someone who is there to teach you a lesson about yourself. So in that situation, the bad boy is there to teach you that these repressed parts of you can come out. You need to find a way of bringing them out into the daylight that that is manageable for you. Yeah. And he probably needs to learn something else from you or from your end. And that's why relationships are such beautiful things. Dating is an amazing thing. So if you haven't been dating, I would highly recommend that you get back into that game. Why? Because of that. Because you end up with people who are there to teach you something about you. It's a lesson you haven't learned that you need to learn. Always, always, always. There'll always just be something about this person that is tugging at something in you, because it is these parts of you that then are getting the attraction to this being. So we are always on an improvement journey. And it doesn't mean that it has to be, a series of broken relationships that you learned this, tossed that one aside, learned this, tossed that one aside. No, it is possible to get into a relationship where you are both then, because it's like you're shining mirrors on each other. So you're showing your partner what it is that they need to resolve, and they are showing you what they need to resolve. And if you then create this enabling environment where you both understand that this is what's going on, so you're not jumping to rebuke or shout or reprimand when things happen in a certain way, but you are taking you're doing the work yourself, because you're working on yourself as well. You are working on improving you, and from that you understand that no one is perfect. And from that, then you're creating this wholesome relationship where the two of you are coming out to bring out the best in each other. And that's just like the most amazing relationship there can be. Yeah. That was Bad Boy. But on this, as sub notes on this one, I have abusive, toxic, violent. I can't read my handwriting sometimes. So this being drawn to such men could again stem from like the things you experienced in your childhood. So if in your homestead there was a lot of violence, there was toxicity, there was abuse, or you saw it mirrored elsewhere, it's possible that then this is something that is in you. It's like a wound that's in you that you need to heal. And so you're being drawn to such relationships for you to then understand that your worth is higher, that you do not need to be in an abusive relationship, that kind of thing. So I'm trying to tie the connection between what might have happened to your past, possibly a traumatic event, the trauma that has affected you in some way, and the kind of relationships that you might end up in. So all this being useful to see, because sometimes if no one talks about it, then you don't necessarily see it. Having the ability to recognize, before you can have the ability to recognize, you have to be aware that there can be something to be recognized. And that is then the purpose of this. Different traumas would impact you in different ways. A lot of them could be just, trauma is such a huge topic. And the statistics around what happens to children are they're heart-wrenching. The children who are the ones who require the most assistance, they are harmless, they cannot do anything on their own, and yet such a huge percentage of them end up in situations that are not for their best. And there could be small t, big T. It could be something that's, it could be something that's self-evident as traumatic, and it could be something smaller that's not that self-evident, something like bullying. And the point is not to compare how big or small the trauma was. The point is to understand that that thing might have had an impact in your life and is showing up even today without you being aware. So listening to things like this is a good step in just having the conversation with yourself, trying to notice, because that's the thing. I always say that the first thing is being able to look and spot these things. So to notice patterns or to notice things that are going on in your life in a particular way, that then helps you be able to realize that you have something to deal with. I would never have gone for therapy. So Gabor really helped. It wasn't just him, but there was something else that I was going through a course, and something within the course told me that I have certain blocks that I don't understand. I don't see them. So then I told myself I'll go to therapy and try and resolve them. When I went to therapy, I didn't. My first day in therapy, I didn't expect to go back because I mean, what are we dealing with here? But it takes some bravery to be able to sit with someone and just some courage to be able to sit with someone and have these deep conversations about things that have happened in certain ways. And our societies, African societies specifically, do not necessarily, they don't, nowadays they don't discourage. I think at a point they actively did discourage having such conversations, but they do not encourage it. It's seen as a waste of money. Why would you go around? It's a waste of money on yourself. There's so much more to be done. But no, what is more important than you? What is more important than you? And you'll see your children, but your children, how your children end up is highly dependent on how you turn up. And so spending some energy, some effort, some money on yourself can be highly influential on the life experience that your children have. So if you better yourself, you better the lot for them as well. Yeah. So that's it for us today. I am, as always, grateful. I have opportunities for coaching. If you're interested, just get in touch with me at shirondune.com. The book Date Like Cleopatra is out. Grab yourself a copy. I appreciate you, and bye bye.